When Dolan was 11, his dad was expecting a meeting with his boss that could potentially end his job because he wasn't keeping up with his work. Or something like that. Dolan had to go to school, so his dad got a taxi. His dad was really worried, and the taxi driver overheard them talking about it. His dad explained most of his situation to the taxi driver, and after his dad said the name of the company, the taxi driver said that he was related to the boss. The taxi driver then ended up crashing into a ditch by accident. They were all okay, but they all still went to the hospital just to be safe. Dolan's dad missed the meeting as the boss had to check on the taxi driver relative. But his dad was fired the next day.
Civil Spider was walking down the street in New York when a tall, thin stranger came up to him. He looked a bit crazy or drunk, maybe both. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a stick. He gave it to Civil Spider and said, "This is your only hope to fight off the shadows. They came from out of the walls. They will consume you." He then ran away. When Pringle was 15, he felt like catching a movie with his friend, so he found his friend's name on his phone contacts and hit call. No one answered at first, so Pringle waited 10 minutes and then called again. On the 5th ring, someone answered. Pringle was about to start speaking when his friend's dad suddenly said,
"Listen, I don't know who you are, but give me another 20 minutes. I'll call you back. I'm balls deep in the wife right now."
Pringle was so shocked that he immediately hung up. He looked at his phone and realized he'd been calling his friend's house phone, not his mobile. 6 months later, Pringle went to the same friend's house for his birthday. His friend's dad told an embarrassing story about a telemarketer who kept calling while he and his wife were having sex. Pringle kept his mouth shut and never called his friend's home phone again.
When Spinal Palm worked as a cart pusher at the local Walmart, he saw a man drive in on a gas-powered moped. He drove through the inside of the store, through the aisles and everything. Most of the associates were afraid to ask him to park outside because they thought he was either drunk or crazy. Eventually, one of the managers asked him to park the moped outside, but apparently, his idea of outside was to take the moped into the cart garage and park it behind all the shopping carts. The man then bought a doghouse which he tied to the moped, but then he struggled for about 20 minutes to drive the moped with the doghouse tied to it from behind the carts.
Andy Mason's teacher was sick of having all her pens stolen by her students, so she came up with a new rule to stop it. If a student wanted to borrow a pen, they had to hand over one of their shoes to get it. If they didn't return the pen by the end of the class, they wouldn't get their shoe back. Animations thought this rule was pretty funny, especially when one of her friends lost the teacher's pen and had to walk home with one shoe.
Gooby once worked at a makeup store that stocked a lot of fragrances. One slow night, they had a couple come into the store. 10 minutes later, one of the light-sensitive security sensors went off, activated by the girl's purse. Gooby's manager, who doesn't take shit from anyone, immediately walked up to her and grabbed the girl's purse. He took it over to the register while the girl screamed, "My baby's stuff is in there! Give it back!" These girl voices are gonna fucking kill me. When he turned the purse upside down, about 8 fragrances fell out, about $600 worth altogether. The girl said,
"Okay, you got your shit. Can I just have my bag back now?"
The manager looked at them and told them to leave the store. Once they were out, he threw the purse after them, shouting, "Go fetch!" He called the police, who arrived about 10 minutes later. Gooby had just gotten off work and spotted the patrol car shaking. She looked in the window and saw the couple handcuffed in the back of the car. Turned out they had waited in the parking lot for an Uber to pick them up. Shima was at her aunt's house, decorating for Halloween. Her brother was getting some streamers and balloons for a party. Shima and her cousin were cutting paper ghost until she heard one of her aunt's dogs bark and whine. Her uncle ran downstairs and said a fire had started. Her cousin started crying and Shima panicked. Shima ran upstairs to get her aunt's cousin and she told her about the fire, who ran downstairs with the others. Shima heard the dog and saw it stuck in the bedroom. She went to free it, but the fumes started to get to her and she started to pass out. Before she did, Shima called and reached out for her brother. After what seemed like hours, she woke up in her brother's arms as he rushed her out of the house. It turned out someone set the house on fire. Shima thought she was going to die, and one of her aunt's dogs didn't make it. Poor thing. She was rushed to the hospital and luckily wasn't injured. Shima was so happy to see that her relatives were saved and that her brothers saved her, but the whole situation still scarred her to this day.
Now, I have been self-employed for most of my life, but I did work as a cashier at one point at a place called Harris Teeter. And at Harris Teeter, which is a grocery store, I remember one time my manager told me to go and clean the men's bathroom in the back. So, I got my mop, I got my bucket, and I got my broom and all that crap, and I went to the back room. I opened up the bathroom door, and there he was, my coworker, sitting on the toilet, masturbating. I looked at him and I said, "Hey there, Robert." And he looked at me and said, "Oh, hey there, Nixium." So I closed the door, and I went to my manager and said, "Yeah, bathroom is preoccupied right now. I'll clean it later." Me and Robert never spoke about that again, because it was really freaking weird. He also had a really small penis.
Slapped Ham was about 10 or 11. His father took him to a burger restaurant. His dad accidentally got quite drunk while they were waiting for their burgers to arrive. When their burgers finally came, Slapped Ham's dad checked his burger and it had no onions on it. So he took it up to the counter and without a word, shoved it in one of the employees' faces and then started screaming at them to make him another one. Unsurprisingly, they were asked to leave. Slapped Ham and his mom got up and left, but his dad stayed behind to argue. He was so embarrassed. When McCallum was in high school, he was hanging out with his friend Gergak, who said he had a crush on a girl at school. McCallum had no problem with it since he was just friends with her. Gergak asked him to tell the girl how handsome and nice he was, to which McCallum said no, until Gergak said he would give him $100. At that moment, the girl walked by and McCallum went up to her, and before he could get a word out, she said, "Hey babe, wanna come over so we could play?" He said, no, I wanted to tell you." She cut him off and said, "Grab my ass and just give it to me dirty," and proceeded to pull her pants down and twerk in his face. McCallum ran as fast as he could home, and Gergak called him laughing his butt off, though he still got the $100.
When she was in 7th grade, Ramona had a boyfriend who she had been dating for about a year. He wasn't that bright and she never really liked him that much. At brunch one day, Ramona told him that they needed to talk in private. She pulled him to the side of the building with a box of chocolates in her hand. In the box were chocolates wrapped with papers that came together to say, "I'm dumping you." But he read them wrong and thought they said, "I will dump on you." He went around telling the whole school that Ramona would take a dump on all of her boyfriends. By the end of the day, the entire school called her Dumpy. It got so bad that even the principal found out about the note and told her parents. She ended up getting grounded and was called Dumpy for the rest of her time at that school.
Zargamba once went to a company Christmas party that was being held at a fancy country club, where the CEO was a member. Everything was free, including the drinks. So Zargamba ended up having 5 Powerball shots, 2 Long Island iced teas, and a mojito. Needless to say, he was fairly drunk. His coworkers dragged him onto the dance floor where he tore it up. Trying to be impressive, he tried ending his dance with a cartwheel to his seat. Misjudging the distance, his legs came down on the edge of the table, sending plates, food, and candles flying everywhere. The plate smashed against the wall, the food splattered a couple of his coworkers and a member of the band that was playing, and the candles rolled on the floor and began a small fire. Zargamba grabbed the first liquid that he saw and threw it at the fire to put it out, but instead of water, he had accidentally grabbed vodka. The CEO grabbed a jug of water and put it out. Zargamba sheepishly helped put the table back up and stayed away from the dance floor as well as the booze for the rest of the night. Everyone, including the CEO, just laughed it off. They still talk about it to this day. James Shark's mom once got him a babysitter who was very polite while she was still there. She even sat with James Shark on the couch and watched TV, but as soon as his mom left, the babysitter's smile disappeared. She shoved him off the couch and ordered him to make her some food. When he refused, she slapped him across the face. That made him sprint to the kitchen where he made her a sandwich. When he came back from the kitchen, he was surprised to find his babysitter making out with her boyfriend. Angry, James Shark threw the sandwich at her, which pissed her and her boyfriend off. They chased him up the stairs and into the bathroom, where the boyfriend kept pushing his head into the toilet while the babysitter laughed. When he stopped, he looked at James Shark and said, "Oh, is someone gonna cry?" Instead of crying, he kicked his babysitter's boyfriend in the crotch. His babysitter got pissed and locked James Shark in the pantry. When his mom came home, she gave his babysitter and her boyfriend hell.
Dolan sat next to a window in class and always had a habit of looking outside, daydreaming. This actually came in handy because the window glass was always dusty, so he could write a cheat sheet on it. If he leaned back just a little bit, the text wasn't visible even to him. Sure, it was a little strange that after watching people play football outside for 5 minutes, Dolan would suddenly know the answers to a math or physics exam, but he was never caught. He did manage to raise a few questions about cheating, and some teachers even asked him to leave the desk so they could examine it. One day, when she was in middle school, Froggy was eating lunch with her boyfriend. She was eating, but her boyfriend never wanted to eat school cafeteria food, so he watched while she ate the brownie that came with the lunch. As soon as Froggy finished the brownie, her boyfriend asked if he could have a bite. After swallowing the last piece, Froggy told him that he should have asked before she finished it. He asked again, and she said it was impossible. He then proceeded to call her a greedy bitch and broke up with her right there in the cafeteria. While I could give you stories about violent people, horrible car accidents, and other disasters, the most danger I've ever been in was actually at a water park. So I'd just gotten off of a huge water slide where I forgot to cross my legs going down, and as you can imagine, that caused quite a bit of pain. But once I adjusted my swimsuit for the atomic wedgie that slide gave me, I was ready to have more fun. I didn't pay $40 just to have to leave. So my friends and I decided to go to the wave pool. It's a safe enough place, no atomic wedgies over there anyhow. After getting bored with the shallow end, we decided to go into the deeper end, which is a little bit more dangerous, but not too bad if you're okay at swimming. Then after a few minutes on the deep end, they decided to turn the wave machine up a bit, which was actually pretty fun. Well, pretty fun up until the point to where you go down, then come back up, and you're greeted to a bunch of fat asses sticking out of the bottom of inner tubes. I reached around desperately to try to find an opening, but they kept kicking at me like I was trying to grab at them or something. So I did the best I could to fight my way back to the shallow end, but it had already been a couple of minutes and I was starting to black out. Thankfully, one of my friends noticed I was struggling after I got out from under the sea of asses, and the lifeguard came to help me. Before the lifeguard got out there, I thought I was done for. I was just about to go unconscious when the lifeguard gave me the banana of life. He didn't actually help me get out of the pool. I had to paddle my dumb ass back to the ladder, but he climbed out with me behind him at least. There's actually a whole lot more to this story, but it has nothing to do with being in danger, so we'll cut it off there. The moral of the story is that water parks are way more dangerous than they appear.
Legna was only 7 years old when he heard a weird story while at camp. The person who told him the story, Hellbent, said that aliens had discovered a way to make humans laugh so hard that their noses fell off. If a person lost their nose and had to sneeze, the mucus would come out of their ears. Being a dumb kid, Legna believed it. He was careful not to laugh too hard, otherwise he would lose his nose and have snot spray out of his ears. Now that he's older, he laughs about it all the time.
So at high school, Shima was a notorious liar. Got to the point where people got angry at the amount of work she got away with not doing. However, her proudest lie, her coup de grace, was phenomenal. She managed to convince a Spanish teacher that her dog really had eaten her homework. There are 2 reasons this was a spectacular lie. Number 1, it's so clearly a lie that it made sense to use it for reverse psychology. No one would use that lie unless it wasn't a lie. Number 2, Shima never owned a dog. She created a fictitious dog overnight just in case anyone asked any questions, and she was able to convince the teacher that the dog had eaten her work. The following week, Shima had again not done her homework and managed to convince her that the dog had died of ink poisoning, though from that point on she always seemed highly suspicious. She ensured that Shima did all her work from then on. When Tolop was 8, he and his family took a trip to Disney World. At the end of the day, they decided to eat at one of the many restaurants, but before they sat down to order, Tolop desperately needed to use the little boy's room. When he'd finished, he tried to unlock the door, but it would not bulge. Tolop imagined spending the rest of his life trapped in this tiny cubicle and panicked. He started banging on the door and eventually caught the restaurant staff's attention. His parents stood behind the door and explained to him how the lock worked, but Tolop still couldn't get it to budge. 20 embarrassing minutes later, a Disney World park ranger had to be called in to break down the door. Finally, Tolop was set free from his toilet prison, but sadly, gotten too late for them to eat. Hey, it's not a trip to Disney World unless the day ends in fucking tears.
One night, Nixium and his buddies were invited to an amazing party. Nixium got so drunk he could barely stand. That was when he decided to get up on the roof of the house and scream,
Hey guys, watch this!
Nixium walked to the edge of the roof above the pool. A friend threw a can of beer up at him and Nixium yelled at him. While yelling, he slipped off the edge into the pool, landing in the 5-foot zone and breaking a few toes and an ankle. Nixium was banned from going to that house again because of the damage he did to the shingles on the roof.
The weirdest thing Nixium does when he's nervous is say,
Screw human emotions.
one time, he was giving a presentation that was very important, and the auditorium he was in was great at amplifying sound from the front to the back. He was very nervous because it was the second biggest crowd he'd ever presented to, about 150 people that ranged from babies to grandparents. When it came to his turn at the microphone, the auditorium began to quiet down. He suddenly said,
Screw human emotions, they suck anyway.
Then he walked awkwardly to the center of the stage and tried to open with something funny. So he said,
Greetings, mortals. I shall bestow knowledge upon your brains, so be amazed at what I have to tell you.
Everyone was still stunned by what Nixium had said before, which had basically ruined his presentation.
James Shark has a brother who was addicted to heroin. For years, his brother's addiction caused him to lie, cheat, and steal from the rest of his family. By far, the coolest thing he ever did for James Shark was to get himself sober. He put in a lot of effort to repair their relationship and wrote an 8-page letter apologizing for all the things he'd done on drugs. It took 2 years of sobriety for James Shark to let him back into his life and trust him. They have a great relationship now, and James Shark is just really glad to have his brother back.
When Dolan was little, he really wanted to be a dog. So one day, when no one was around, he took off all his clothes and started barking and panting and generally acting like a dog. He even got down on all fours and crawled into his own dog's kennel. But later on, Dolan's mom decided to take the dog for a walk. She poked her head into the big kennel and found Dolan naked, sitting there with the family dog. The weirdest part is, Dolan had also decided to dress up his dog in human clothes. His mom was really angry and really disturbed.
When Ladybot was 11, she used to get horse riding lessons. On this particular day, a storm was brewing. Ladybot wanted to call it a day, but her horse riding instructor said riding during a thunderstorm was good practice. Ladybot's horse was preparing to go over a jump. Ladybot knew they were going way too fast, but she couldn't stop it. As they approached the jump, lightning lit up the sky, scaring the shit out of the horse and causing it to make a sudden left turn. Ladybot came flying off of the horse and flipped in the air. She landed right beside the jump, breaking her wrist. If she landed just a few inches closer, she would have cracked her skull open and died. Ladybot was taken straight to the hospital and learned how dangerous it is to mix horse riding lessons and thunderstorms.
Emoji's little cousin was spoiled rotten and never got yelled at. One time, when they were playing, his cousin had to poop, and he walked her over to the toilet. Someone was in the bathroom, so instead of waiting, his cousin pulled down her pants and took a big stinky shit on the floor. She didn't want to get yelled at, so she yelled, "Ew, Emoji, why did you poop on the floor?" She even convinced her parents that Emoji shat in the hallway. He didn't feel like playing with his cousin again after that.
When Ladybot was in 8th grade, she dated a girl named Sharpie. Everything was going great until one day Sharpie said it was time to reveal a small secret about each other. Ladybot's secret was that she had recurring nightmares, like freezing to death in the ocean when the Titanic sank. In response, Sharpie looked at her and shouted, "Devil worshipper! Spawn of Satan! You're a demon!" Sharpie then said Ladybot was going to hell and that she was schizophrenic, and then she ran home.
Andy met the love of her life, Adam, at a college art class. He sat next to her, asked to borrow a pen, and before they knew it, they were both head over heels in love. On their first date, they went to a Halloween horror movie night at the local cinema. Everyone was in costume except them, so the night had a very spooky feel. When the movie ended, Adam walked Andy to her car so she would be safe. They ended up standing around in the parking lot for hours just talking. Andy asked him if he would get in trouble with his parents for being out so late, and he nonchalantly said, "Nah." Years later, Adam confessed that on that night his mum actually called the cops and reported him missing because it was 3 AM and he hadn't come home yet.
When he got home from school one day, Zaraganba made some hot chocolate and relaxed. All of a sudden, he heard the doorbell ring. He looked through the peephole to find a girl, soaking wet, holding a skunk. Startled, Zaraganba hid in his room and hoped she would eventually go away. However, the girl kept ringing the doorbell. So he dialed 911 into his cell, but didn't call. Instead, he opened the window to talk to her, with his thumb hovering over the call button. It turned out that the girl was one of the neighbor's cousins and was house-sitting. She was in the hot tub when the skunk began to chew the wires and got electrocuted, but survived. She wanted to borrow Zaraganba's phone to call animal control to come help.
Pandora was laying in bed once when her cat became startled looking towards her legs. At that exact moment, she felt a weight laying across them. When she looked up, she was greeted by a child she'd never seen before. He was a black-haired, pale, skinny-looking boy. He looked about 10, and he was looking at her directly in the eyes, only he had no eyes. They were hollowed-out black pits. He gave her the most unnaturally large grin, and she had never felt more frightened than she was by that face. She screamed and he instantly vanished. Luckily, the weird ghost child has never returned.
Honeybits was home alone one weekend because her parents went on vacation. She was watching some movies one night when she heard yelling coming from outside. When Honeybits looked out the window, she saw a man in a dirty bunny outfit. He was hopping around on the sidewalk while saying, "I'm a cute bunny, love me." Honeybits started dying of laughter, but it was only when he had hopped away that she wondered why he was doing that in the first place. When Pringle was at school, there was this kid they called the Aura due to his bad smell. Pringle and his friends kept talking about the Aura around this kid, and he asked what the Aura was. To quickly cover up what he'd said, Pringle answered that it was the final boss in a game called Beast Hunting Squad. Of course, this game didn't exist. He started asking questions like how many levels the game has, what the bosses were, and what some character moves were. He even asked what console it was on. Out of haste, Pringle said the Atari. The Aura didn't believe him and wanted a picture of the game. Pringle said that if he took a picture of the game or tried to tape it, the camera would shatter. He kept asking more questions, and in the end, he fell for it. Pringle felt so bad about it that he wrote a 16-page long instruction book on how to play it and gave it to the kid. The book included gameplay, controls, secret rooms, bosses, movesets, items, AI dialogue, and even Easter eggs. Even when the Aura couldn't find it online, he believed Pringle. To this day, he still asks how his playthrough is going.
One time in high school, a friend of mine was having trouble with a bully. He wasn't really scared of him though, and they arranged a fight on our football pitch. My friend turned up alone and I was held up in class, so when I got there was just a whole bunch of guys piling on, beating him up. I ran over and started to pull people away. The first one I grabbed was the bully. I threw him hard to the ground and went back to grab the next guy. While I was walking back, I realized, hey, he's a jerk and he's going to attack me from behind. I turned around right in time for him to throw a punch at me with a run-up right in the face. I lost my balance. It was a hard punch. I straightened myself back up and I remember getting really angry and enjoying the look of fear on his face as I walked back towards him. A teacher broke the fight up before anything else could happen, which is probably for the best. We all got detention, but nobody got expelled because nobody tattled.
When I was about 8 years old, I lost my teddy bear and I was searching the entire house for it. The thing was, my brother's room was attached to the laundry room, so when I went into the laundry room to see if my teddy bear was there, my brother screamed, and when I looked, he was in the middle of, playing with his willy. So I, in return, screamed, ran out, and I didn't talk to my brother for a couple of weeks after that. One day, while Froggy was on Skype with her boyfriend and a few other friends, they got into a fun conversation about their favorite show, Gravity Falls. Out of all of them, Froggy's boyfriend was the biggest fan. At the time, he was relaxing at the computer with a bag of spicy Doritos. They were discussing the nature of Bill Cipher's mouth-like eye when Froggy's boyfriend blurted out, "What's it like to eat with your eye?" Before anyone could say anything, he shoved a spicy Dorito right into his eye as if his eyelids were lips. Needless to say, his eye turned dark pink and watery while he was moaning in pain. It was a moment that made Froggy and her friends roll their eyes. As soon as the burning in his eye went away, he said he was going to give it another try. Everyone told him not to, and he obeyed. Froggy and her boyfriend are still together to this day, even though he continues to do dumb things.